Hey guys, welcome back to the Wild Courage podcast. Again, I'm in Winnemucca, Nevada at the Best Western Plus with my friend Samson Moss. Thanks for taking the time to do this after a long day. I don't know what time it is, but thanks for jumping on here.
Thanks for asking me to be here. I feel honored.
Yeah. Well, so we met, I think, in Elko the first time at the Outside Circle show like 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago now. And then I've seen you here last year at the Buckaroo Gathering, roping, and you build hats. And you live in Canada.
Yes, sir.
And you're a cowboy and a poet. And that's about all I know about you, which again, like we were kind of talking before, this is so fun to get to really know somebody.
Pieces to the puzzle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, why hats? What drew you to that?
Necessity really. I first started out, with the hat deal in 2015, when I was in college riding bareback horses.
Wait, you rode bareback horses?
I did, yeah.
I thought I was too tall to ride bareback horses.
I know, right? Yeah, I'm the only 6'5" bareback rider I ever knew. Yeah. I know Bobby Moat's pretty tall. He's 6'4", but
he could spur one down for
he could
sure.
spur one down. So that he was kind of my big influence.
You're like, if he could do it.
Absolutely. I can do that too. Yeah. And so I started, in 2015 college when I was riding bucking horses, and kind of out of necessity, my hat was always bent up
in the back, especially.
Right? So I learned how to shape a hat with a tea kettle, and that dwindled into just kind of doing it for myself and buddies before and after rodeos. And then I kind of savvied it for after a little while, and I was like, this is kind of fun. And so I began to customize them a little bit. I started playing with changing out hat bands and reshaping them.
Like sewing the hat bands in?
Yeah.
So. Would you do it by hand?
Yeah, I always have done it by hand.
Oh, dang.
And then that worked its way into, customizing them, and then it kind of progressed to rebuilding them, learning how to clean hats, and learning how to work with felt, what to do. Thankfully, what not to do as little as possible.
Yeah.
And then in 2019, I was down in Elko for the poetry gathering, and I met a few hat makers down there, one being Chaz Mitchell. And I called him up later that year, and he's just like, hell yeah, get down here, man. And so I went down to Newcastle, Utah, and apprenticed under Chaz in January of 2020. And I was his best, worst, and only apprentice, he says. And from there, and it was great because he used to ride bareback horses too.
So you had that thing in common.
We had that. We had the poetry thing in common. We know a lot of the same musicians, so we just blared music and shared poems and made hats for a month. It was great, just shy of a month.
Did you feel like you always had that like creative thing in you that was looking for a place to?
I've always
so I'd imagine
been
in that
type.
season when you were apprenticing for him, it was like an explosion of getting to be creative, and
especially when you'd give me free rein on a hat now and then. Yeah.
That's
it was great.
awesome.
We just got along great. And then, from there, it took me about a year to get my ducks in a row with all my tools and my materials and suppliers and yada, yada. And then January 2nd, 2021, I made hat number 1.
No, only 3 years ago?
Coming on 4 now.
Yeah, how many? Well, it's almost the end of the year. How many hats have you made?
I think I'm working on 633 or 34 now.
Dang, dude. That's a lot of reps. But what in our culture doesn't take a lot of reps to get good at, right? It's no different than making a bridle horse or figuring out
consistency
roping thing and
learning from constructive feedback, constructive criticism.
So there's an element of humility, it turns out, like everything else too, right?
Now and then there is, especially being self-employed. That's the real kicker sometimes, where you just get overwhelmed some days. It kind of when it rains, it pours.
Yeah.
And everything comes down on you, and you're the only guy that has every responsibility. and you're just like, damn, some days you just want to give it up and go back to doing something else.
Well, it's hard when it's time to hand out ass chewings and you're the only one to give them and receive them, right?
Yeah. Sometimes my boss is a bit of an asshole.
I hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially when I was like writing outside colds for a living and I'd wake up hungover at 11 and I'm like, we're not going to get all 15 of them rode today. And then that kind of just like feeling behind all the time. And then,
which is where I can combat that. Cause I've never owned a television.
Wait, what?
Never. No. My folks had one when I was growing up and stuff. But since I moved out, I've never had a TV. I've never owned one. And I don't want to.
What do you think you attribute that to?
I have always, it kind of goes back to that creativity side of things. I've always had something better to do, whether it be reading.
So it's not that you can't sit still. This is fascinating to me because you can sit and read a book and don't feel fidgety. So it's not like nervous energy, like, but your creative part of you.
Yeah, I was always building something,
always
working on something, whether it be
it.
horses or machinery. And like I was a heavy duty mechanic by trade, right? And so I'd be fixing my truck because I drive a Dodge. And, you know, whether it be working on tack or whether, you know, and then it got working on hats and all that. So my hat shop's right in my house.
Yeah, it's tied to your hands.
Yeah. I've always been a physical learner.
What did you grow up like Cowboy? So where are you from in Canada?
So originally I'm from a small town called Bazano, Alberta. Is where I kind of started out life. And so my background is actually kind of in the feedlot side on both mom and dad's side. Mom's side's from Picture Butte, Alberta. Dad's side's from Bazano. And then at a younger age, a little kind of before school, we moved to High River, Alberta, and which is about a half hour south of Calgary. And then started out school there, and then I graduated from high school in Okotoks, which is a little closer to Calgary, about 15, 20 minutes from Calgary, Alberta, just south. Yeah.
And was your family in the livestock business when you?
Dad's always been a cattleman. He always, we were always grew up in the beef industry. And then my mom was a teacher and then moved into a vice principal position, principal, superintendent. And
so she always had a good job.
Always. Yeah, you betcha. Well, and so did Dad. You know, he's always been in leadership positions in his roles and where he's been. So he was a great guy to look up to, looking back. Yeah.
Sure. Brothers or sisters?
Yes, sir. I'm the oldest of three. I got a younger brother. He's about 16 months younger than me.
Oh, so close.
Yeah. And then I have a younger sister, and she's about 4 years younger, and there's a reason for that. I think after the thought of having me and my brother, another one was like,
we need a break.
Ooh, yeah.
Were you Hellions?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially me. Yeah.
So when I first saw you, I got to tell you, I was out at the poetry gathering at the Outside Circle show, and I was like drawn to you because I was like, you reminded me so much of a younger version of me.
Okay.
It was eerie, dude. It was eerie.
Beard and all.
Yeah. And you were like a good dancer.
Oh, thank you.
And I was like, oh yeah, I totally see myself in that young man out there, just doing all the things just right.
Yeah, I'll try.
That's awesome.
Don't do all the things right.
So, growing up, horses always part of the gig? Or?
No. So that's one thing most people don't know about me. I've worn a lot of hats, pun intended. So I grew up kind of around the feedlot, but mostly we lived in town growing up. I mean, we spent a lot of time out there.
And not all feedlots are horseback, right?
Yeah, yes and no, but I was never really on payroll growing up.
That was just Dad's job.
Yes, and what our family, you know, that
your
was heritage
on both sides. Yeah,
what put food on our table. Yeah, along with mom being a teacher, you know, we kind of lived in town for that reason. But all the time we were just kind of hanging around the feedlot. And then I didn't get into horses until I was probably 18 years old.
Really?
After high school. Yeah.
What was high school about for you?
So that's kind of a long story too. And I'll kind of break it back a little bit. Growing up in elementary, younger ages, I was always a popular kid, had a lot of friends, you know, life was great. And then coming about middle school, my mom was the vice principal of the school.
That you went to?
Yeah, that I went to. I couldn't even pick my nose without her finding out about it.
It's tricky business right there.
Yeah, man. And then, yeah, coming about middle school, things turned on me and I started getting picked on hard, big time. Yeah. And just bullied by all these kids I kind of grew up with and other
What
kids
changed?
that I didn't.
Like looking back now, can you identify?
So I think it was, you know, picture 8th grade kids, right? They want to be little hellions. That's what's cool.
When the clicks start happening, right?
Clicks start happening. Kids start getting into some bad shit. And I think because of the fact that I was the vice principal's son, they didn't want to get found out. And this,
so they started isolating from you.
Yep. Yes, sir. And
because you're a threat, like
I guess in a way.
They thought.
Right.
Sure.
And so they started, ditching me and then, getting picked on, and I started getting in some fights and I didn't get in as many as I should have, you know, looking back, but because I was always scared I'd get in trouble twice, right? I'd get in trouble once at school from mom and then get it double at home from dad. Yeah. And, it got really bad to the point where I remember my mom bawling her eyes out, wanting to quit her job if it meant that her son could have friends.
Dang.
And so that was kind of where I started learning how to be alone, is in middle school.
Because it was safe.
Yeah, I guess in a way. Yeah. And then where we went to school, we started high school in 10th grade. And then I got my driver's license in 10th grade. And I think a lot of that pent up anger, built up frustration carried on, obviously. And I always grew up mountain biking and snowboarding. I've been on a snowboard since I was 7 years old.
Really?
That's been my number one thing since I was 7 years old. Still is. Yeah. And so that was always a thing that I could do with my dad or my brother or friends and stuff like that. I took that into high school, played basketball until high school. I remember my mom and dad, they told me I had to go to basketball tryouts. I remember the football coach coming up to me and asking me to try out for quarterback. And I hated everybody else that was going to be at the tryouts. And I said, no.
Those were the same kids that gave you grief.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong, I could throw a football, but I was like, I don't want to be one of them jocks. I'm not going to go hang out with those guys. How bad they are to me. And then my mom made me try out for basketball because it was something I was good at and had done for a while. And I went to the tryouts, but I didn't try.
You're like, I got to check this box.
Yeah, because they kind of gave me two options. It was basketball or snowboarding. I couldn't do both, so I chose snowboarding. And so then in March of 10th grade, I turned 16 and I got my license and, car, and I could go have my freedom. And so all of high school, I was on a snowboard kind of 4 or 5 days a week.
What, did they have competitive, like through the school or anything? Like
not through our school, but there was, so we were only about 45, 50 minutes away from Canada Olympic Park, COP in Calgary, which is where they held the 88 Olympic Games.
So legit mountain.
No, it's not a legit mountain.
Really?
No, it's not. But they have a super park in there.
They have all the cool,
or super pipe. Yeah, they got a big park. and snowboard teams, like a slopestyle team. And so that's what I did. And I joined the slopestyle team at COP instead of high school sports. And that led me to find new friends.
Yeah, that you had this thing, you had this bond that was in common,
Mm-hmm.
and there was none of the baggage that came
Exactly.
with.
It was all like
They
a
didn't
fresh
care
start
who your
again.
mom
It was new
was.
territory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you found your people group.
I found my group, with friends in Calgary. And like 3-4 nights a week, we were on a snowboard, sometimes 5. On weekends, we'd go to some competitions or take the bus out to Sunshine, which is west of Banff, Alberta. That's kind of my home mountain, I call it, is where I grew up. And through that scene, I found the Calgary hardcore scene. Underground hardcore punk.
Oh, like music.
Yes, sir. Yeah. And so that transitioned in. Yeah, see, this is surprising to a lot of
awesome.
people. I mean, if you saw me up close, I'm tattooed up. And
Really?
Oh yeah, yeah. And
How did your parents?
they didn't like it. And I tried so hard to say, look, Mom, so many of these kids are straight edge. They don't do drugs or alcohol. But I mean, that was a small fringe side of it.
That you weren't a part of.
No. But you had to tell them something, right?
Yeah.
But no. And that's how I found the hardcore scene. And that's what gave me an out from all these kids at high school. I hated most of the kids I went to high school with. Hated. I had like a few small handful of friends that I went to high school with.
What does the hardcore scene mean?
So it originated in Boston. It was a kind of a sideline of the punk scene. It had a little more community involved, a little more family aspect involved. And that's where I was able to find my sense of belonging.
Your tribe.
My tribe.
Because it's probably oftentimes a bunch of outcasts type get together.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
like, I accept you for how you are.
Yeah. That's exactly what it was.
And then
we're all a
it's
bunch
like,
of outcasts. Yeah. A bunch of misfits.
This is our tribe.
Yeah. And then that being also in Calgary, that intertwined with my snowboarding, and I was
Fit like a
in the
glove.
city in high school most nights, whether it be at a show 3-4 nights a week or snowboarding.
A show like music, like a punk rock show, like
small
live music.
hardcore show. Exactly. Yeah, I grew up in the live music scene, was big, and I kind of helped be a bit of a promoter for a little while, and I even got into a little band for a little while.
Really?
Yeah. But we didn't really take it anywhere. We were called War Poet.
War Poet?
Yeah.
I love it.
And we weren't big. We didn't go anywhere with it. And then I found my home there.
Yeah. Did alcohol, was that like your introduction into like partying too? Because I would imagine that scene that happened.
Yeah. Well, in 10th grade, I was dating this girl in 11th grade. And so I got invited to this high school party. That was the first time I got shit-faced off my ass, big time. But then I started, falling away. I was like, man, I still don't want to. Like, I know I'm in high school now. I don't want to be friends with these people still. And so I just kept to my friends in Calgary or snowboarding. And they would drink and stuff. I never got into any hard drugs, really. We'd smoke weed and stuff like that, but that was about it. Yeah.
Was drinking, how was that received in your home? Like, did your folks drink and stuff?
They did, yeah. I mean, not that there was any issues with that.
Right.
No. I was lucky to never have to look away from any of that at all. No. That was part of the reason we left Pisano, was there was a lot of alcoholism there, and Mom didn't want that for us. Yeah. But it was never an issue. I'm sure it probably added a little bit to some of the frustrations and stuff with folks, but it was a lot of anger through, the hardcore scene just fed that, but it was also a release. So it was kind of a catch-22. We'd go there and beat the shit out of each other 3-4 nights a week and go home as best friends.
Yeah.
In the pit. And go have a hot dog after.
That's bizarre.
Yeah. But that was our release. That was our punching bag, and that was our sense of belonging and community. And then shortly after high school,
that carried you all through high school. That was your tribe. That was your scene.
Yeah. I did not hang out with kids at my school.
When did you get the first tattoo?
The day after I turned 18. So I was still in 12th grade. Yeah. I was a senior. Yeah. And I remember my mom and my sister seen me later that day, and I had a little piece of tape. My mom knew I was thinking about getting one, and I had designed it on the computer. And it's a song name from a band, and that really kind of carried me through high school. And she's seen me with this tape sticking out of my shirt, and she still talks about how her heart just sank.
Aww.
Yeah. Her baby, right?
She only knew what was to come.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah. And then shortly after high school, I started getting involved with a little rougher crowd. Through that hardcore scene, I kind of left and started hanging out with some tougher kids. And I remember one time I got invited over to this one kid's house, and I knew what they were going to do to me, kind of initiate me. And they were skinheads, these kids, and that was kind of my like, you know what? I don't believe in this enough to commit to it. And I didn't go. And I kind of walked away from the scene then. And that fall, I was going to SAIT, the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology, trying to upgrade some classes, because for me, and this is another thing that's going to blow you away, I was looking at a career of either a mechanical engineer or graphic design. Yeah. So in high school, we had this program called New Media, and I loved it. And it was photography and videography and 3D design and Illustrator and Photoshop and all that. And I was good at it and loved it. And it was my creative side of me coming out. And so that's what I was kind of actually looking at doing. And then I seen a lot of this money that a friend of mine was making roughnecking on the rigs. I was ooh, 18 years old. I want that yesterday. So not knowing exactly what I wanted to do after that semester, one of my dad's cousins got me my first job at 18 years old on an oil rig. So I went to the oil field.
It's a whole nother experience, isn't it?
18-year-old kid,
Dang.
roughneck. That'll toughen a kid up in a hurry. Yeah. Yeah. And I spent a week as a lease hand and got moved to roughneck and did that for about a year.
A year?
Yeah.
That's a long time to make it that young.
Yeah.
Because that's
I never had a home rig though.
Oh, so you were always
I worked on 7 different rigs and kind of jumped around where I was needed. But that was a whole new awakening too.
It's such a different culture. I can't even explain it to people.
And I'm so glad I got out of it, because that is not a lifestyle that was sustainable for what I wanted for my life at all. And I was still getting in fights with guys there and screaming matches. But that is probably one of the best things I ever did.
Because you knew what you didn't want to do with your life.
No. Because at 18, this angry, pissed off kid coming out of the hardcore scene, went to work with a bunch of blue collar boys. And sure, my uncles and my dad would try to tune me up there, but I was too smart ass for it to resonate. But when you're 2-3 hours from town on an oil rig, you don't have a choice. And these guys are twice your size and 4 times as tough. And yeah, that was a whole new awakening for me. But how come it was the best thing I ever did was, to this day, no matter what I do, I know I've worked harder.
That's the bar.
Yeah. I know I've worked harder and nothing's going to stop me. I can do this. Yeah. Yeah.
That was my experience too.
Okay.
Like, I remember turning in my first paycheck, and I worked on rigs, but for a service company was, in 1 week I had 132 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Like I didn't know I was capable of working that many hours for that long and that hard physically.
Right.
Like we're capable of so much more.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know exactly what you're talking about.
So that set the standard as far as capacity goes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a completely different culture.
It is.
Mindset and...
Yeah, but then I started thinking elsewhere. You know, we'd get some mechanics come out to the rig, and I was kind of intrigued with what he was doing. I'd go watch him or ask some questions there. I remember being a young, dumb kid talking about going to college. And I remember the driller, or no, it was like the motorman pulling aside one time, and he's like, "Hey, you listen, around here, we don't talk about college. I don't want to hear that out of your mouth again." Right? And I remember this one rig I worked on, myself, the motor hand, the driller on the night crew, like the other crew, and the push were the only 4 guys that finished high school. You know? And so being in the crew truck at 5 a.m, and one guy's like, "Oh, my wife and kids are going skiing today, and I won't see them for another 13 days, and I'm going up stick." And I was like, damn, that's what kind of family life is that for me? So that's not what I wanted. And that's not to take away from anybody that does it. I love and respect everybody that works in the oil field.
Same.
And I am 100% for Alberta Oil. And it's just not what I wanted for my life anymore, and ended up walking out of that as I started my heavy duty apprenticeship. Is what I decided to move into. Yeah.
So you're like 19 at this point?
19, yeah. 19, somewhere in there.
How long did you do that?
So I started the apprenticeship, and in Alberta, what you have to do is you have to find an employer that's willing to sponsor you through your apprenticeship first. And so I found an employer with a case dealership, ag. That was kind of where I started really looking towards agriculture as a career opportunity for the first time in my life. And because I didn't want to, at that point in my life, go back to the feedlot, do much like that. Like, I took a job in High River for a case dealership, and I was the only apprenticeship working under 7 journeymen. So that was great. I learned a lot. Dang. Yeah, it was awesome. And then I started college that fall as I turned 20. Yeah. And went to Olds College, which is north of Calgary, about an hour or so. And that's one of Alberta's 2 big ag schools. And so for me, I started school there, and within a week I had like 400 new friends. Like, whole new beginning. And that was, I remember, like the coolest 3 years of my life was
so you did
college.
You did it the whole time?
Yeah, I did a full-time program. So I did a full-time diploma with the heavy duty apprenticeship, and then went back for my agribusiness degree as well through school.
And there's probably some cowboy type guys that were in that school, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Farmers, ranchers, you name it.
Kids that grew up on...
Yeah, like I could walk down the hallway and talk to pretty much anybody. Yeah. And most everybody knew everybody. I think their student body incorporated like 1,400 students. It wasn't very big. No.
And again, like-minded people, kind of like the punk scene is like, it's like the evolution of school of like, you got to be with these kids, and then you start growing towards what you're interested in. You find like-minded people, and it's easier to find community in that.
I mean, they have business programs there. They had a fashion program there. It was really fringe off the side, but mostly it was business, like horticulture or agriculture or mechanics.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
Wait, when did is that where you started riding bareback horses?
Yes.
Was in college?
Was in college.
Did they have college rodeo teams there?
They did. I was on the old Broncos college rodeo team. And my coach, Kirby Black, and Kai Marshall are the two guys I learned mostly from. They still tell a funny story. Every time I pop through, I try to visit Kirby. And he tells a funny story. He says, me and Kai Marshall, and he's a multi-time Canadian all-around champion, I think 3, 4, 5 times.
Oh, dang.
Like that. Yeah. And he rode bareback horses and roped calves and was dang good at it all too. And Kirby, he rode bareback horses and bulls. So they were the rough stock coaches. And I showed up one Tuesday evening wearing overalls, jean overalls, with a deerskin glove and a set of spurs.
Just like regular Ralph's spurs.
Yeah. And I originally didn't want to try saddle bronc, but I was so hard pressed to find a saddle with leathers long enough for my damn legs. And I showed up and I said, I want to learn how to ride bareback horses. And Curb's like,
I bet you do.
yeah. And he turns around and he looks at Kai, and Kai's like, Kai had 7 riggins in his truck that night. So they ran all these horses in, and I ran my hand in 3 times that night and liked it. And I was like, oh, I guess I'm going to stick with this now. So the next week I got on 3 more head in the practice pen. And the first time I was just shaking in the chute. Right?
Oh, dude. You didn't,
and
wait,
Curb's like,
you didn't throw up?
No.
I did.
Did you?
Oh.
No, and Curb's like, hey, quit shaking. Just nod your head. I remember I recited some Chris Ledoux lyrics to myself before I nodded my head.
Of course. That's the only way.
Yeah.
That's part of the only reason why I did it.
Yeah. How long did you do it for?
Way too long.
Yeah.
I loved the culture. To me, it was an identity thing. Like played football and basketball through high school.
Right.
As soon as that got over, I was like, now I don't know who I am.
Right.
Because I don't have this thing that consumed me, and I found my identity in, right, like being good at sports.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a picture in my grandma and grandpa's living room of my Uncle Ricky blown up riding bareback horses when he was 19, and he still had his rigging.
Mm-hmm.
So he was always my hero. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to do that.
Be like him.
And like I got out of high school and I was like, now what? And I was like, well, there's a guy named Artie Cutler in my hometown that was, I think once or twice he won the old timers world champ in the bareback riding. Mm-hmm. And so he had a bucking machine, and he would hang out with us all night and show us how to spur the spur board and the bucking machine. And that was it. I was like, but to answer your question, in Jackson Hole is where I went right after high school. They had a rodeo every Wednesday and Saturday night. And then the dude ranch that I was working at, we bucked out our dude horses on Friday nights for the dudes. We just flank, and we had a nice big arena and shoots, and it was wild. And so I'd get on 3 head a week.
Sure.
And they'd pay our entry fees and get us in, and then they'd haul the dudes in there to watch and cheer for us. But then I went to Arizona and got my permit and, declared the turquoise circuit. Mm-hmm. But I ran around guys who were really good, and they could get me into rodeos I should not be in because they'd buddy me on my permit in them. And I just loved the culture.
Yeah.
I loved the drinking. I loved the traveling. I loved going to California and New Mexico and all of that.
Yeah.
But I wasn't good.
Okay.
Every time I'd about quit, I'd win a couple $1,000.
Right.
Just enough to keep me going,
Exactly.
But I should have never rode after like my 4 summers in Jackson Hole because I was AMI guy at best. You know what I mean? But
like that Waddy Mitchell line, that ecstasy of winning the round now and then, giving you the courage to stay in the game.
That's exactly it. I was addicted to the shindig, man.
Right.
I loved it.
Me too.
The traveling, the being driving all night. Like
you have to too. You got to love it. And
I loved that more than I liked getting on. And the guys I traveled with, they like to get on bucking horses.
Yeah.
I liked, now looking back
everything
at
that
it
came with
and
it.
being honest about it with myself.
Right.
Because I have all the pictures and like I have all the rewrite stories like we all do.
Right.
But I just was addicted to the shindig, man. I didn't crave getting on them.
Okay.
I would psych myself up to do it. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't good.
Yeah.
But I sure loved it.
Yeah.
Everything else about it.
Yeah, me too.
Freaking loved it.
Me too. It took over my world.
That's all I thought about.
Same, day in, day out. Dreamt about it. Yeah.
Yeah, my first rigging was a flat rigging that had some sheepskin glued to the bottom of it. Same thing with the glove. And I was like, man, I can't stay on these things till I got around somebody that showed me how to, and I got a new rigging and a glove with a palm piece in it. And a nipple on the bottom. And then I got hung up all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I would get hung up my fair share too. Yeah. I remember my first one was so it was that second week I got on three head, and then the following weekend was Vermilion Fall Rodeo, college rodeo.
I've been there.
Have you?
To Vermilion.
No kidding.
For Rancher Open.
Yeah, okay. Yep. And so I entered there. That was my first rodeo. And I won the average.
Dang,
I was
you hung on him, huh?
Yeah, just because I probably was I was the only guy to cover the first night, and so then all I had to do was cover the second night. I knew I was going to win the average. It's awesome. I was like, well, guess I'm going to ride bareback horses now, and I bought that rigging off of Kai and glove. It was a Wyoming high lift, Barstow Wyoming high lift, B-bar B glove. And away I went.
Sean Shields, baby.
Yeah, away I went.
He built my gloves too.
Cool.
Blackfoot, Idaho.
Yeah. And same deal. It just took over my world. Yeah. And that was all I thought about. Luckily, I was good enough in school that I didn't have to try very hard to get decent grades. That's kind of how I always was at school. I never really had to try to study that hard. Just kind of coasted middle of the road. And then, so I did that all through college.
When did you know you were done riding bucking horses? Was it a thing inside of you, or was it an incident?
Well, I kind of quit riding bareback horses when I moved to Saskatchewan. After my third year of college, I moved out there to complete my direct field study, which was basically with ag business. You do a year in school and a year out of school.
Okay.
And so I moved to East End, Saskatchewan, which is east of the Cypress Hills. Actually about half hour, 45 minutes from where Coulter lives. And there wasn't any practice pens around there.
So it was more of a circumstantial thing. It's not like you got hurt or you quit craving them.
No.
It was just your life went in a different direction.
If I was going to go to practice horses, I had to drive a few hours at least in the middle of the winter out there. And that was a big snow winter too.
Yeah.
So it kind of just killed it for me. But then the next year I got on my first ranch, like stock saddle bronc horse in Maple Creek, Saskatchewan. And then I just completely switched. Void. Yeah. And so I was like, oh, okay. I always wanted to kind of try that, but I didn't know where to try it. And then this opportunity came up.
Wait, how old are you?
Right now I'm 31. I'm a 93 model.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I know.
I was riding bucking horses when you were born.
No kidding.
That just makes me feel old. But the ranch bronc riding thing was really coming on strong around then too, because
it was just kind of getting going up in Canada.
It wasn't as big as it is now.
No, it's really gained a lot of traction in recent years.
Did you ever run into Matt Robertson up there?
Oh yeah,
really?
Lots.
So that was the same time.
I consider him a good friend. Yeah,
he's the best.
Yeah, he got me on one of my first ones. Him and Wasey Marr got me on my first ranch bronc up there. Yeah.
Yeah, I love Matt.
Yeah,
I talk to him quite often.
Yeah, we've gone to a few rodeos together.
Good dude.
Yeah, really great person. I got a lot of time for Matt. You bet. And so then moved from East End back to Alberta so I could finish my apprenticeship with the heavy duty stuff. And I was only a third year at that point, and I was dating this girl at the time and ended up breaking up with her and then moving back closer to around where I had some family around Lethbridge, Alberta, which is kind of just south of Picture Butte, what they call Feedlot Alley. the shit capital of Canada. And finished my journeyman ticket there. Worked for another year, but probably like a lot of guys, I just lost love for the trade. I got so
you burned out?
Yeah, way fast too. I hated the schedule, the just every day in and out, working in a dingy shop covered in chaff and oil, and working with a bunch of perverts that got nothing better to talk about than snowmobiling and blowjobs.
Yeah. That's a whole different culture.
Yeah, I'd sit and read my lunch breaks, man. Or talk to this old guy that was from New Zealand.
What kind of books would you read?
I've always been really infatuated with old ranch history books. Kind of turn of the 20th century, just especially Alberta ranch history, but all of North America ranching history, cattle history.
What's the books where they left Wyoming and went to...
So that was written by Richard P. Hobson Jr. Yep. Yeah.
There's 3 of them?
There's 3 of them. And
Greatest
it's really cool.
Books ever.
They are great.
Greatest books ever.
And nonfiction story. I actually drove by just outside of DuBois. The old... I forget the name of it now, but the place, the ranch that they left.
Where they left from.
Yeah. And a friend of mine, actually, we were just talking about it a month or 2 ago. But to know a lot of the country that they went through and went to was kind of neat. And then the first one was...
We pointed at
Grass Beyond the Mountains.
Grass Beyond the Mountains, yeah.
Then there was Nothing Too Good for a Cowboy.
Yep.
And then The Rancher Takes a Wife.
Yep.
And those were awesome. And I read those 3 books during this little time period where I'd sit at my toolbox and read at my lunch hour. Yeah.
They're literally the 3 best books I've ever read.
Yeah. You're so involved in it. Yeah. It was great. But I've always been involved in history books. I really savvy history. Yeah. I'm kind of a nerd.
A cool thing about those books is a family that I worked for in Wyoming was the one that turned me on to those books, was an outfitter, and he owned a place in DuBois, and he has the original table, the desk that guy signed the deal on in Wyoming.
No kidding.
Yeah, the desk is in his office.
Wow.
Cameron Garnick. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Absolutely, huh?
Like, has a picture of the guy. Signing the deal on that place that he left from.
That's cool. This is the stuff I'm always. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, kind of like that song. I love old shit.
Yeah. So you got fed up with. It's like I see this like reoccurring theme in you of like seeing the writing on the wall is the word that comes up, like with the punk scene, and like seeing that like there's something in you that's like, wait, I don't know if I'm willing to do what it takes to say yes to this thing.
Mm-hmm. I think it kind of came
because it's kind of like the same thing that's happening right now with the mechanic, like the oil rig. Like, I don't want this for my life.
Yeah.
I see like you're very observant of the culture around you of like, I don't want to, and again, no offense to anyone, but like, I don't want to grow up and be this guy 20 years from now that's missing the ski trip with his family because of this. Is it worth it to me?
Right.
And it seems like the same thing kind of happened with the writing on the wall.
2/3 of the time. And I've always kind of been very watchy. But I've always had a chronic sense of angst since I was a little kid. Didn't know where I belonged.
Like restless?
No, looking for a place to belong. A misunderstanding of your purpose in life. Broad sense of direction. Yeah. And I've always had that. And that's kind of why I was always a little bit, ever since middle school, on the outer edge of things, whether it be a weird kid or doing my own thing. You know, since I was kind of 14, I've spent a lot of time alone by myself. Yeah.
Isolation.
Yeah. And then the hat making definitely feeds that. It's a pretty reclusive trade.
Yeah, you're just by yourself.
Yeah.
In shop.
Yeah. Live alone in my house is where I got my shop. But yeah, and then this is kind of where the story takes a bit of a wild turn. So in 2019, I came down to my first Outside Circle show in Elko. I drove down, checked what it's all about. Corby and Coulter were there. And so I knew them guys. And so
how did you know those guys?
I met Coulter
Wall, just for anybody that doesn't know. Yeah.
In 2015, he was 20 years old. He had just released Imaginary Appalachia, and he was opening for Shooter Jennings and Waymore's Outlaws. And they played a show at Average Joe's in Lethbridge. So I drove down from Olds and met a couple of my pards there, and we checked it out. And Coulter's going to laugh at this if he hears this, but we're all just there to see Shooter. And we're like, never heard of this Coulter Wall guy.
Kind of local kid.
No, he's from Saskatchewan.
Oh, but I mean, like, not from the States. Like, he's Canadian.
Right. Still Canadian.
Yeah.
But we didn't even know that. He was
just a dude
opening
on his
act.
name.
Yeah. And it's a rowdy kind of sports bar. And we're all sitting there drinking and carrying on, having a good time. It's loud and there's TVs going. This kid walks out on stage with this kind of straggly, beardy, 20 years old, right? And this hat he had on. And
I've seen some of his earlier hats.
Yeah.
He'd like to have those pictures.
You bet. And didn't really introduce himself. Just kind of sat down, started picking his guitar, and nobody really paid much mind. But then he started singing. The whole room shut up and just turned and were like, that's coming out of that guy, that kid. And he played his 6 songs, and he's like, thanks for listening. I'm Coulter Wall. Just walked off stage, and I went and bullshitted with him there for 15, 20 minutes, and we just kind of stayed in touch. And I'd see him now and again ever since then. But then, I ran into him and Corby, and like Corb's dad and my granddad, they worked kind of were co-workers. They were both vets together, and kind of they were good friends. And so he was kind of a bit of a family friend in a way. And we all we were Team Canada at OCS that year. And on my way down...
Did you come down by yourself?
Mm-hmm. And on my way down, I was on the 86 west of Pocatello, and I was seeing all these dead owls on the road. They were kind of neat looking, kind of white and orange and black and striped. And I was like, dang, those make some cool feathers for some hats. And they're all over. And I was like, if I see another one here, I'm going to stop and pull over and pick some of these feathers. Right? And I looked in front of me, there was nobody for miles, and looked behind me, there was nobody for miles. I couldn't see a single person. So I see another one, I pull over, and I'm there with a set of pliers ripping feathers out of this roadkill. Sure enough, that's when all the traffic comes in. There's this weird kid with an Alberta license plate picking at roadkill.
Oh, the poor little guy's hungry.
Right. And anyhow, I had stopped at Atomic 79 in Dillon, Montana, and I bought something there, and they had to give me a paper bag. And I put these feathers in that paper bag and stuffed them in the kangaroo pouch in the back of my seat to keep them from getting wrecked. Anyway, we have a great time, as you do in Elko. And as I'm coming back, I showed a buddy of mine those feathers. He's like, you're not supposed to have those. And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, yeah, that's like an endangered species. You're not supposed to have those feathers. And I was like, what if I just play the I'm not from here card? He goes, good luck. And so sure enough, I got searched coming back across the medicine line. And you're sitting in this glass room, and this lady pulls out this paper bag, and I'm like, oh, I'm fucked. I'm going to jail. I didn't know. And she just pulls these feathers out and looks at me. Probably thought I bought them because they're just in this bag. And she just like looks at me through the glass, and I'm like, oh. And she just keeps rummaging through with this other guy. They were just tearing my truck apart. Anyway, about a month or two later, I'm with a good friend of mine. We took his Peterbilt up to Vermilion for a ranch open up there. And I'm telling him the story. And he really savvies a lot of the indigenous spiritual kind of world and meanings of different animals and dreams. And I'm telling him the story, and he's just enthralled, and he's listening in really hard. And he goes, but it's at the point in my life where I'm already thinking of quitting mechanicking. And he knows this. And he goes, you know what that means, right? I was like, no. He's like, owls are a symbol of death and rebirth. It could be the death of a person or an idea or a thought. And I've always loved owls because they see everything. And they're smart. And he's like, what if you finding that owl was you? And I kind of told him, and actually, I had already told him that I was thinking of, like I said, quitting this job. But I said, you know what? That's when I made up my mind, was in Elko. Was that because I seen all of these guys that were making a living cowboying, and that wasn't as a popular thing in Canada. There's a lot of fences up there. And I didn't have as many friends that were cowboying at the time up there, and didn't know really where to go about it as far as, because like there's cowboys and there's feedlot cowboys, right?
Right.
And so
inside cowboys and outside cowboys.
Yeah, exactly. And I didn't want to be a feedlot cowboy. I grew up around it my whole life, and I didn't want to do that. But sure enough, he's like, I think that owl symbolizes you in a whole new step towards a rebirth as far as your career, man. And I was like, I think you're right, and that was kind of wild. And sure enough, a week later, I threw in my 2 weeks. I got a job with this ranch and feed yard up at Tilly, Alberta, which is east of Brooks, which is east of Calgary, right in the middle of nowhere from north of the interstate, or I guess Highway 1. You'd be an interstate down here. I lived like 6 miles north of there, but I could look east and I'd see the curve of the earth before I saw another tree or building in there. It's desolate country. Yeah. That Badlands, hard grass country out there. And so I got a job there, and they ranch, and they had a few ranches, but they not only ran some other cows, but ran a feedlot as well. And it was me and one other guy, a friend of mine that actually kind of played with as a kid in Bazzano. We were the only two guys not from Chihuahua that were working there. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And so that whole season, I was like the only guy checking 10 to 12,000 head.
Dang.
And
I mean, you grew up around that a little bit, but did you know horses very well?
Mm-mm.
So you were kind of just thrown into it.
Yeah. I kind of started riding around 18, 19, but I didn't take it too serious until I kind of was thinking of quitting mechanicking. A girlfriend of mine at the time, her family ranched, and that was kind of where I started more getting into horses and like I bought my first personal horse at 23 when I was still living in Saskatchewan. Yeah. I mean, we always had horses around the feedlot and dogs and stuff, but never my own personal ones till then. And so I would be the only guy really checking amongst numerous other everything you got to do.
Yeah.
Right. And then, I'd be working 4, 5, 6 in the morning till, sometimes 6, 7, 8 at night, and then try to go home. I had to drive 20 minutes into Brooks if I needed any errands done or groceries, and then come home and do all my own chores and cook supper and stuff. And then by that time I had to get working on hats. I was doing hats as a side gig, trying to make some more money and learn how to work with felt a little better. And before you know it, it's like 1, 2 in the morning. And then I had to get up at 3, 4 for ship out or something the next day. So I went on like 3 hours of sleep a night that whole season.
Dang.
And I was doing all the PMs, which I loved that. But yeah, after a while, just being, I think, so drug out. And I had kind of had some of these thoughts as a kid when I started getting picked on really bad, but it kind of resurfaced again. Like I fought depression for 6 years during my teenage years and talked myself out of it. My mom would drag me to counseling and all that, and I hated going to shrink. I ended up talking myself out of it, but it came back. And kind of got to the point where it was like not even frightening anymore. It wasn't scary.
It was familiar.
Yeah, it was familiar. Just a funnel I was going back into. As they say, familiar hell. A lot of people choose familiar hell over an unfamiliar heaven kind of thing. And so I just started every day thinking riding pens, doctoring, thinking like how I was going to go about ending it, how it would be the best for my family. Everything down to the least cleanup. Just how I'd go about doing that. And this went on for months. It wasn't scary anymore. It was just a fact of life, what was going to happen. And there was not, like, I didn't have a lot of friends out there either, right? And so it was, again, just me being by myself. Like, I'm used to that. But when you spend all that time in your own head, it started to get to me, especially when you're ripping apart, doing all the PMs every day. You just get familiar. And I mean, I even was familiar with it as a kid too, but when it's every single day like that with so little sleep from what I was getting, along with that built up sense of angst I still had picking at me from the bottom side, where I could be happy, I was just like, I think I've tried a lot of things, and I was like, nothing's going to work. And so I got to that point, down to eating the barrel of a gun. And a lot of it also came from when I was 17, not this part, but how come I got back into agriculture was when I was 17, we lost my dad's brother, my uncle. And he was 47 and he had a heart attack and died.
Dang.
And I wear a lot of his old clothes and boots. He was my build, my height, weight, hockey coach, ran the feedlot, avid skier, like active guy. And I just had a heart attack and died November 9th, 2010. And I was in 11th grade. I was a sophomore and 17 years old. And because I was such a pissed off teen, it took me a few years to find a tear for my Uncle Doug. But a lot of that resurfaced, and that sense of pride in my last name and my family came back after high school. And that's how come I kind of fell back into agriculture, where I kind of had my roots. Yeah. But I inherited a couple old rifles from him, and this is the one I was swallowing, one of them. Until one day I was at a friend of mine's wedding, August 28th, 2019. And I was sitting there, 3 of my best buddies are at the table, and I kind of just drug them out back. And it's this beautiful wedding venue, big barn, and I just drug these guys up back and just bawled my eyes out. Told these guys everything, what was going on. And 2 of them are from New Zealand, they're brothers, and the other guy's from Australia, and so they're hugging and kissing me and just holding me, and I've never cried like that since I could remember.
Wow.
And told them all everything that was going on. And I was like, Matt, I need you to take my guns. Now, I got 2 in the truck. I need you to go them. The next day, I met my parents in Lethbridge and told them what was going on too. And I was like, I just need you to not freak out right now and just hear me. And they did, and it was great. But they ended up convincing me to move back home for the fall, and I could just day work and work on hats. They came out, but I put a couple 2 weeks in, and they did leave me with that one rifle there, because there's coyotes and some wolves. There's still like even the odd cougar around there and threat and stuff like that. They trusted me enough, I don't know why, but just to leave that one there. And it was a really bad time to leave, but my mental health was more important to me than the fall run that year for some reason. But I did. And then, ironically enough, my little sister, was studying neurology at the University of Victoria, and working with some brain doctors in Calgary, and they specialize in brain trauma and concussions. They're concussion specialists. And the one guy she was working for, he developed that electrotherapy. He's the one that kind of invented that and started that. And through snowboarding, the hardcore scene, all the fights I'd get in, mosh pits and stuff like that, mountain biking, to bareback riding, to ranch bronc riding, I had a lot of concussions. Having a brother. I had a lot of concussions, but I only thought I had ever had a few. And they convinced me to get mapped. So your brain has 19 controllers in it that all talk to each other, and different wires, like a CAN bus on a tractor or a truck or whatever, a wiring system that they can connect to each other with. And when you get a concussion, these wires pull apart and they break, and your brain don't talk to itself like it should. It doesn't communicate with itself. And so they send these microvolts into these 19 spots, and they're like 80 times smaller than what your cell phone gives off. You can't feel them, but they, through different frequencies and strengths, and they can measure the reactive time and strength. And they map all this. And then they give you this huge long report on their findings. And I remember my mom came she was curious, and that one time when he had this 4-page report written out about every one of these locations on my head. And he sat down and he goes, so how many concussions do you think you had? I was like, well, I know for sure, like 3.
3 real good ones.
3 good ones, yeah. And he goes, Well, you've had 12 like medium to severe concussions, along with like I can remember how many mild concussions, like just bonkers. And what they go through though is they'll measure different effects of each one of these locations, and because it can tell you where you've hit your head, where it not only contacted, but where your brain rebounded off of the other side, how bad it was, and how many times.
Dang.
And through that, they can tell you, well, you probably experienced this, this, and this. And I go, yeah. And he's like, oh, okay. So you probably also get this, 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 and this. And I went through and I highlighted probably 90% of these symptoms that I was experiencing. Everything from thought processes to how you process emotion, touch, light, feel, sound, everything. Literally your control unit, right? And so that made a lot of sense.
Did you find relief in it that there's an explanation for some of the things that I'm going through?
I did.
Did you
find?
My
mom especially, because when I was a teenager, my mom would stay up at retarded hours of the night trying to read and research what was going on with me. When I was a teenager, I couldn't handle lights being on. I couldn't handle throwing out garbage. I had to recycle everything. It's just like the way my mind thought. And it was because of all these knocks to my head. But that was not something that people talked about or even savvy growing up. Nobody knew. Mom's like, there must be a hormone imbalance or something going on. And she's trying to figure it out. And I thought she was crazy. But that literally checked every box. We're like, okay, it's from all these concussions.
I know when I was like diagnosed with like complex PTSD, I was like, well, that's only for soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember when it was explained to me that trauma comes in many different forms.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
That I just felt this big sense of relief because I always thought there was just something really, really wrong with me.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
And it was like, I'm not messed up in the sense of like, it's not my fault.
Right.
Like,
and you're probably ain't the only one.
So it's like it was the first time I feel like I really like had any compassion for myself,
right?
Because of the ways that I showed up that were unhealthy, to different scenarios that I couldn't explain to anyone.
Yeah,
I don't know why I do the things I do.
Is it why I was so damn frustrated all the time?
Yeah,
I get that.
Yeah, I don't know. It just really like, for the first time, I felt my nervous system just like, oh, there's an explanation.
Yeah,
it's not because something's wrong with me.
Right.
There is, but it's not my fault.
Exactly.
I don't know if that makes sense, but
no, it does. I completely get what you're saying.
It felt like some peace could,
right?
Like, oh, okay,
and a new doorstep.
Yeah, like, oh, it also gave me hope of like, well,
exactly.
Now I know what this is from.
You got something to tackle now.
Now this is where the journey can come to overcome it.
A whole new journey begins now. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
You experienced some of that?
Totally.
Yeah. That's good, dude.
And so, that was a big relief, I think, especially for my mom, like I said, as far as how come I acted that way and why I was so damn depressed all the time as a teenager and pissed off and couldn't handle things and light and all that. And then, so I did that for 3 months. And then I'll never forget, I was driving back from helping my buddy preg test December 16th, 2019, and driving back out of Kananaskis and gotten back into cell service, which is like an area kind of in the mountains, just west of the foothills, just getting into the mountains, beautiful area of southern Alberta. And I got an email from this brain doctor So they did 2 rounds. They did 19 controllers, all 19 locations on my brain, and then they'll map you again, check your progress. And then they did one more round. And over the course of a few times a week for a few months. And some people, they do it for years. Everybody's different. But I got this email saying they were happy with my progress and they were discharging me. And I was like, oh, damn. They're like, that was a big day for me. I was like, wow, I'm not fucked up anymore.
Yeah. That's what I was going to ask. What emotion did you get from that?
I was a little confused, but I was also like, damn, am I fixed now? Like, I was happy and proud of myself for doing this. But I was also kind of like, now what? So the sense of angst returns. And that was when I reached out to Chaz Mitchell. And because I didn't have a job lined up, I didn't have a plan.
But you had a hope of a fresh start.
Yeah.
Like, I get to start a new chapter.
Yeah. And I was getting good with these rebuilds. I was rebuilding hats at the time, and I took some ugly things and turned them into beautiful, made them pretty. And that was kind of, people were sending me from all over the continent to rebuild these hats, and I was getting good at it. And I kind of started thinking, what if I go apprentice how to make hats? And I couldn't pull a hat off a shelf to fit my head. So I was like, damn, I'm just going to make my own. So Chaz says, yeah, okay, I'll get down here, man. So went down there that following month, January, just a couple weeks later, drove down to Utah, lived in a motel room down there for a few weeks and ate nothing but pancakes and chunky soup. And
come on.
Yeah, come on.
Cowboy
one time. Yeah. and then came back up, started looking for a job. And this is wild. I threw it on Facebook that I was out looking for just cowboying job. I got a call from everything from the Singleton Ranch in New Mexico through the power of Facebook to Cowboy wanted me to come and be foreman at Risky Creek, BC. Dang. And I was like, Steve, I've never been to Risky. I'm not going to go be a cow boss there. I don't know the country. Like, these guys ain't going to respect me. It's not. And then I was also like, but how out there, how am I going to do this hat thing? I can't make that manageable. Being that isolated, trying to also rebuild or start making hats. I was like, it's just not viable for me right now. And a friend of mine shared it, and I found this job on a farm down at Pincher Creek, and where I'm at currently now, in the ad area, and went down there and worked in this farm for a season, quit there, went and worked at this ranch in the area. They also ran a small feedlot. And then the agreement there was it was part-time because I was also working on starting to make hats. And did that for a season. That was kind of I was thankful to even keep that job because the day before I started that job on that ranch, I went to the practice pen in Fort McLeod and had this res pony flip over on me and break my foot.
Dang.
The day before I started
your new job.
The day before I started my new job. I was already moved into the house on the place, and I was like, yeah, Paul, I got some bad news.
He kept you on?
Yeah. But I didn't know I broke my foot. I was like, I can't move my foot. It was black. I just refused to believe it was broken. And he's like, damn, okay, well, take a few days, see how it is. And I had these pair of lace-up cowboy boots. And then Brahma ones, with the high heel.
Mm-hmm.
So the way my foot broke, I could walk on the heel of these boots. So and my foot was swollen. It was all hell. Yeah. So I had to lace up boots. So I laced up these boots tight as I could. And I was riding for 2 weeks, scraping bunks and checking pens and stuff, like on a broken foot, in the shop, working on 95 Pete they had me rebuilding, and not believing my foot is broke. And the one of my boss's brother, so my other boss, his wife is a nurse in town, and she says, "You go get another look at that." She's like, "Go to Emerge," because the original hospital I went to in Fort McLeod, they took an x-ray and they're like, the guy calls me back like 3 days later. "Oh yeah, it's not broke." Click. Like, "You're fine." And then I found out later, I went back to get a second opinion on this foot of mine. And this guy, he's from Hungary, takes one look at my foot. He goes, "Oh yeah, looks like a Lisfranc fracture." I was like, "Oh,
Just
what?"
by looking at it?
"What?" He goes, "You're probably riding a horse, weren't you?" I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "Used to happen to all the cavalry guys." "Yeah." He says, "It's probably operable, but we'll see. We're going to take an x-ray." And as he's walking away, jokingly, I go, "You know what, doc, just cut it off." He goes, "That is an option." I go, "No."
Just kidding.
Yeah. And he's like, "That's what they used to do. They'd cut half your foot off." So it's like, you think of the bones in your arch of your foot as, this is going to be the most Canadian reference. You're going to laugh at me, but you think of an igloo, the entrance of an igloo, the blocks.
Yeah.
And you take a file or a horse rasp, a shoeing rasp, and you just go in the middle of one. And these blocks, they'll begin to flatten this arch in your foot. And to prevent me from getting flat-footed and arthritic, the ligament between two of these bones tore off bone with it.
Ugh.
So they put a plate on top to anchor up the two broken bones to two good bones, the next kind of toe over, whatever. It's right on the top of my foot. But so I did that surgery, and then I was out for a little while, and we got these bad snowstorms come through, and I would still offer to go clean bar. I felt like such a lazy POS. And they're like, "No, you're good. Take care of yourself. We need you full back when you're good and ready." And about Christmas time, I started walking on 2 feet. But during that time, here's another story. I should back up a little bit. When I was out at Tilly on that place, there was 3 resident owls that moved in.
They lived in the barn?
Down an old barn on the place, yeah. I named them Larry, Moe, and Curly. But each night and every morning, they'd sit out and just kind of watch me. If I was just sitting on the porch, or if I was there's a big sliding door, they would kind of watch me eat my supper from outside. And I just remember kind of looking at these owls. And again, this kind of goes back to that owl thing. And these owls, about a week or so before I quit this job, right when I was about to tell my friends about myself potentially blowing my head off, these owls took off. They left. I never saw them again. And then, now to fast forward again, when I had first moved into this place, I should also mention, I've always, not always, but in my teenage years, this has happened a lot. I've had very vivid dreams and then live it, kind of a deja vu years later. And it's creepy. I'll even tell people about really specific ones and then live it years later. And I don't know if you believe in reincarnation. Do you much?
I don't think I do.
No, I don't really know if I do, but I'm kind of agnostic towards it. I think there might be some merit behind it. But I remember on this broken foot, there was this owl. There's a bunch of trees around the house. Sure enough, an owl showed up like a couple days after I moved into this new house. And that night, I had my a 303 Brit, Lee Enfield Mark number 4. That my Opa, my mom's mom, had given me. It was first rifle he bought when he came to Canada from Holland. And had the bayonet on it and everything from the war. But I had it under my bed. Just all I had to do was throw the bolt in and it was ready to rock and roll. But I remember that night and seeing that owl before I went to bed in this new house, broken foot, and about 2:30 in the morning, I wake up to gunshots in the yard. And I'm like, and I just roll over, crack the bolt in this. I'm like, okay, it's go time. Like, you know, what's happening? But it was loud. And it, like, I woke up and I still heard some more, but it was snowing like a bastard. And I waited around for about 10 minutes. It got quiet. Finally looked out the window. There's nothing. I just see snow coming down, big fatty snowflakes. Finally got the balls to limp up, grab a spotlight and limp outside. And there was a gate at the end of the drive and I had closed it, I remember. But there wasn't a track in the yard. And I heard this owl. And owl kind of just flew off about 30 feet from me again. And I'm starting to think, what is going on with these owls, man? And it was clear as day. These gunshots were 30 feet from the house, as far as my brain was concerned, right? And anyway, that was the only time I really experienced that.
Wow, that's crazy.
But again, with the owls things, and then come that later, that next fall, they kind of ran out of work going into winter, and I was thinking about taking the hat thing full time. They were nice enough to let me and my girlfriend at the time stay living in the house till we could find a new place throughout the winter before they started calving again. And so January 2nd that year, 2021, I made hat number 1, and that October I took it full time. And again, that late September, I remember, and she was there, we were sitting on, and I remember seeing a couple owls just show up for a couple of days and then take off. And that next Monday morning, I was self-employed for the first time in my life. And so that was when I took the hat thing full time, dove into it, deep end, scared, dumb, not knowing how to be self-employed, but definitely benefited from a lot of the agribusiness program that I had taken, those classes and stuff. And
well, it's, I own a business now with Doc, and I look back at all the jobs I had that I thought were meaningless outside of just the paycheck. And they all equipped me for what I'm doing now.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
All of them.
Yeah.
I needed to go to the oil field. I needed to do things that were so far outside of my comfort zone to prepare me for what I'm doing today. But without the advantage of hindsight, it was like, this is a dead end, wasteless thing.
Right.
The point being, wherever you're at, even if it's not what you want to be doing, I would just say, get a hold of it
Yeah.
and learn anything you can. Because as we all know, like it's all seasonal. Nothing seems to be forever anyway, right? Especially if you're aiming higher.
Well, and in plain sight, it looks shallow.
Yeah. But it can be equipping.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's also obvious to me now why your logo is what it is.
Is now.
I love those stories because I believe that God is supernatural in ways that don't make sense to the way our brains work.
Mm-hmm.
And we miss so many things if we don't have our eyes open to it.
Okay.
And so I think that there's things like that can help guide us and show us pathways that are worth paying attention to.
Right.
And sitting in and surrounding ourselves with people that understand things that we don't.
Yep.
That can be turned into beautiful stories like yours. Like that's fascinating to me. Also, I want to note for people that don't live in the countryside, owls aren't super rare. Owls are very rare.
Yeah, it depends
on where you live.
Where we live, there's quite a few, but yeah, you don't see them every day.
Well, also they're pretty nocturnal, so it's not like you have a lot of encounters with owls anyway. Like, they're not like snow leopards rare, but it's significant that they've been put in your pathway so many times
at pivotal points.
Yeah, pivotal points, and that you're sensitive enough to like recognize. Wait, there's a rhythm here.
Every time I still see an owl, I still think of Gary. Yeah, telling me of what owls symbolize,
represent. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I, we know each other as much as we want each other to know on social media. And I see you, because we're friends on social media, living what I would consider like this dream life.
You're not the first one to say that.
No, and I love it because I always had friends that went to, I grew up with that were like, man, they got married young and were kind of in the grind of whatever job they're doing that they hated. And I was, again, that's why I said earlier, like, I was traveling around, working on different places and like, I want to be a really good horseshoer. So I would go do that for a season and study that craft and apprentice with really great, amazing guys. And then, I'm really I want to be better than just a Cowboy colt starter. So I'd go work with really good colt guys and turn into performance horse stuff.
Some skills there and some skills here.
Yeah. And so that's why I was kind of like drawn to you and recognize like you reminded me a bit of my younger self in that, like, I see you in the spring going branding all over the place. And like, you've kind of taken life and like, I want to go do the things that I love to do. And I find you to be super curious and humble and
thank you,
wanting to go get better at the things and also
I do
live the fun part of the cowboy lifestyle, which is awesome.
And sometimes it catches up to me,
In what way?
Well, I think like you said, the preparation aspect, like for instance with the rigs, that taught me how to start learning how to travel, and live on the road. And I still do that a lot. And sometimes it catches up to me where most of my friends are, getting married and having children and buying homes and I'm not. And I feel sometimes I'm like, and don't get me wrong, I've had a few relationships walk away from me, and then I've walked away from some too. And, it just kind of was like, damn, sometimes I just wish I had somebody in the passenger seat
to do this with.
Yeah. Or even when I'm sitting at home for days, like shit, I'll go a week or two without talking to another human being sometimes.
Yeah, that's not good.
And so, like face to face, like in person, obviously I have to communicate with customers and stuff, but, Yeah, so then sometimes it kind of gets a little lonesome, but at the same token, I'm just so used to that where I question if that's even a valid thought to be having.
Yeah, and especially, I don't know about you, but like at 31, I was starting to feel those thoughts because I'm like the feeling behind and like seeing my friends that had really healthy marriages, something that wasn't necessarily modeled to me, but something deep down I longed for. I didn't know what it looked like. Because I didn't know how to have a healthy relationship at all.
Same, and I've only learned that in the last few years. A lot of growth. Reading different books and learning attachment styles and how to deal with things like that. But another thing that scared me from relationships too was like half of my aunts and uncles and cousins have been divorced. And I have no time for that. I don't want to ever, that's not even in my vocabulary.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I have started to get very quick to just walk away from a lot of early red flags, and that took me a long time to start learning how to read those.
Yeah.
I'm still learning.
Well, the stakes get higher as we get older a little bit too, just even with the dating pool, right? If you're not dating a 22-year-old and you're 31, then there is some weird sense of time and like, are you serious about this? Or because they have this clock, right, that we all are aware of. And so it gets really tricky. And I remember, I mean, I didn't get married till I was 34, which is hopeful to someone maybe at your age that's like, man, I don't know if this is going to happen or not. But because I was terrified of divorce for all the reasons as well. And also I was just so terrified of loving someone, or it goes back, I think I say all the time, like if you really knew me, you're not going to like me.
Yeah.
And if you really, really, really knew me, there's no way you could love me.
Right.
So I relationship would get to a certain point and then I would bounce.
Same.
Because I'm like, I
scared to
care
trust.
about you. This is where it gets weird, and I think people get misunderstood, and you might understand this. It's like I liked girls so much sometimes I would break up with them because I knew I was going to hurt them because of what I felt broken in me. They didn't deserve that version of me.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
I understand that.
Like I care about you so much that I'm going to sabotage this.
Yeah.
Because I know that this isn't going to go anywhere good or long.
Right.
So I actually care about you enough that I'm going to sabotage it and blow it up. And usually that just meant me moving and saying, sorry, I got to go.
And I haven't had that happen but once. And it was fairly recently, actually. Yeah.
Sucks.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah. But it's good to be aware of that. And I think that's just kind of all part of our path is developing those different stages of understanding and comprehension.
Well, I love that you said that you've been studying about attachment styles, because I feel like if you start learning some of those things about the ways that we don't like the way we show up relationally, or where we feel scared in a relationship, and lean into those things instead of running from them.
Right.
It's like to get that understanding and knowledge, and some of those light bulbs come on just like they did for you with the concussions and stuff, right? Of like, oh, this is why. There's a reason why I have this attachment style.
Right.
And so this is how I self-protect, and this is how I show up in a relationship that's not healthy.
Yeah.
And doing the work in that space, I think, opens the opportunity for true connection with another human being that can look healthy, right? Right. And you're on the right. I'm just saying all that to say that when you said that you were looking into some of those things, I just felt like, keep going there, because that's where hope lives.
Right.
And understanding.
Wild hope, courage, right? But and then, a lot of it breaks down to trust too, overall.
For sure.
Is the most important key. And that's so hard for me, man. And some people are just like, oh, he's probably got trust issues. But I'm like, I haven't had a reason to trust you. You haven't given me a reason.
Well, and they add up, right? You get your heart broke once in 7th grade, and then it's a friend group. So it doesn't have to mean that some 6-year girlfriend relationship that breaks your heart and hurts, and then you start adding and stacking those all up.
Yeah.
Then you're like, well, no wonder I don't trust people.
Yeah. And then a lot of that also came from, like you said, not just with women, but friends. Right. Or who I thought were friends. Yeah.
And that's why it's important to like go back and look at our origin story of like, oh, why don't I trust this girl? She's really seems great. And then it's like, oh, wait, this is tied to being bullied in junior high.
I'm
and my
starting to see patterns here.
Rejecting me.
Yeah.
And what I do with that rejection now.
Right.
It damn sure shows up in your 31-year-old self. And that's why it's so important to do this work, is to go back and try to find some healing and reconciliation in what happened to the boy in junior high.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because until he gets some healing and resolve in that, it's going to show up at 30, 40, 50. It just doesn't go away.
Right, man. So that was a big thing. Realizing where that stepping stone can be placed, that first stepping stone, and it's helped me in my business. I used to be absolutely black and white, but now I'm like ready to, I'll just fire that hat off, pay me later, man, get it done, just more trusting, and help me build a business off of trust. And it stems out from just romantic relationships or friendships. Yeah. 100%.
Well, it's at the core of who we are, right? It's like I always say, you can't give away what you don't have.
Yeah. Right.
You can't do it. You can fake it and white knuckle it from time to time, but then it doesn't last.
Right.
And that's why, I think it's just so important to that question of, why do I show up the way I do? There's a reason. And you can go do some work in that area, and then the next thing you know, it's like, oh, my horses aren't so jumpy around me because my soul has some peace in it that it didn't used to have, and that anxious little boy's getting better.
And I think
he's more trusting.
That's funny you mentioned that, because I start to see how even my horsemanship has improved with a lot of this self-reflection. Yeah.
Well, yeah, our nervous system's like active, and it's sending out energy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And horses can totally pick up on that.
Horses sense it better than people, right?
Absolutely.
As you know.
Way better, yeah.
And then I was wondering why does that person like act that way around me? I'm like, well, I know now why.
Yeah.
And at the time, I felt like I'm the harmless, nicest guy.
Right.
I'm the fun party guy.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, how, where can people find you on Instagram?
It's long. It's Samson with a P with a bunch of underscores in there. Just you can look up my name, Samson Moss.
It'll pop up.
I have a website, prairiewhenhatworks.com. And other than that, I've deleted Facebook. I got off of Facebook there.
That's a weird one.
Yeah, I didn't really like it as much as I thought I did. Yeah. And I was kind of like, I've never been on any dating apps either, ever. I refused to. So I was like, you know what? I don't need that. I don't need Facebook. I don't need this. I was like, actually, I kind of need Instagram. That's helping me. So I'll keep that. And then,
it all can be a tool. It's all like what's going on inside of you. When I'm not doing good, all of that does so much harm to me, because I'll see a branding I didn't get invited to.
Same.
And so my rejection thing of being bullied, and because we have some similarities in our story, will kick in.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm literally feeling rejection from a branding that's happening 1,500 miles away.
Right.
Why would they invite me anyway?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it all depends on, not to rabbit trail too much, but it is so much of what's going on inside of us, that how we experience things. And I know when I'm not doing good, I have to stay away from all of that.
Right.
Because it isn't healthy or good.
Yeah.
And when I'm doing good, it's like such a powerful thing too, in a good way. It can be used for good.
It,
yeah. Because when I look at your Instagram stuff, I'm like, cowboy, living free, like adventure, like
It's fun.
In the spring, especially, it's like, oh, he's in Wyoming. Oh, now he's in Nevada. Now he's like, I like live vicariously through you. I'm like, dude, that's badass.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
It's so great. So I think that, it depends on what's going on inside of us, and it can all be used for good or bad.
Totally.
Like anything, you know?
Absolutely. And so that's a big reason why I decided that it would probably be a good idea to come on here and share that. You're not the first person to tell me a couple of those things, but I think there's probably a lot of people. For instance, your podcast with Dakota May, I listened to that, and I just felt a lot bigger connection to him than I had ever experienced or had thought before. I was like, damn, that sounds a lot like my story in a sense.
And
a lot of similarities. Didn't really grow up cowboying.
Didn't fit in.
And so I was like, and I think I even told you, I mentioned that to you. I was like, man, thanks for doing that. I felt a lot of connection with that podcast specifically. So it was great. And I think if people can share these experiences, I know that there's another guy out there, some kid wanting to get into cowboying. I had a kid come up to me today, ask me, hey, where can I intern? And I was like, where? He goes, I'm in Montana, but I'll come to Alberta, Wyoming. I don't care. I just want to learn to cowboy. And I was like, all right, well, here's my number. I'll see if I can hear something for you or help you out. But, and so there's always that next guy in line, and I think it's so important that what you guys are doing.
Thanks.
Helping guys that, like we mentioned last night, that conversation the seven of us had at the supper table had probably never taken place in Winnemucca, Nevada, with a bunch of guys wearing cowboy hats ever.
Like, I stopped the conversation. I'm like, do you guys recognize what's happening?
Right.
We're having a deep, meaningful conversation about things that really matter to all of us.
Healing, yeah.
And I stop and I look around, and we're at this casino. Who knows how old this casino is, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm like, I think that it's so exciting that we get to change the narrative around emotional, mental health, and and it's guys that are brave enough, like you, to be like, no, I've been in a very dark place.
Well, and a big thing of that for me, especially, I don't know if you probably remember Ty Posbon, Posy. This clinic my sister worked at, they worked right in cahoots with the Ty Posbon Foundation and worked a lot with rodeo athletes and stuff like that. And so that's how I felt comfortable enough to do that. And I have recommended that electrotherapy to a lot of my friends. And don't get me wrong, it ain't cheap, but you put a price on your brain, because you can be the biggest, strongest, best looking, fastest, toughest guy out there. But if you don't have your mental health, you ain't got shit,
To that point, thank you for bringing that up. I think that's part of what this whole wild courage thing is about, is like on a bunch of different fronts, like you and I were talking about before, right? Like, you're not alone, even when you think you're alone. Take a risk with somebody that you trust to share your story. Like, one of the most impactful, if not the most impactful thing you told me, and the most intimate and vulnerable thing, is when you were at that wedding and you said, I can't do this anymore. And it took 3 trusted friends that sat with you in your pain and didn't try to fix you, but just were with you and held you and didn't try to fix you, because nobody can.
No.
That was a very powerful part of your story that I really appreciate you sharing, because especially as macho bullshit cowboy types, like, the fact that you were at that low of a place, that you were scared enough that you were going to really harm yourself, that you let somebody in, is powerful and life-saving, right?
Yeah, and you just, I hope if there's somebody listening to this that's in that state, that they can see, and now look at me 5 years later. Yeah. I've never been in a better position in my life. Yeah. And I got an owl tattooed on my sleeve here.
Dude, that's awesome. Well, I think you're amazing. And I'm really grateful that you let me and us into that space. And I know that's not always easy to go back and revisit some of those things. And I'm just really grateful for you and for your story and for your honesty and vulnerability. And I think more of you now than I did 2 hours ago or whenever we started this, which I think is noteworthy in that, again, back to that, if you really knew me, you probably wouldn't like me. And I think that that's part of the culture that we're really wanting to change. And that's what that conversation last night we had is like, oh no, it can be different. It can look different.
And I think a big thing that is so prominent in especially the cowboy culture, you know what, agriculture for any kind of, whether strain, be it farming or horticulture or crop science or whatever. Farmhands is, I think a lot of people look down on people that don't know or didn't grow up doing this. And agriculture is struggling. We need ag workers, especially with the way things are going with this recent election now. It's so important that we go beyond holding ourselves on a pedestal above these people that don't know and just help the next guy in line. It's not that hard to just, hey, try doing it this way.
I think that needs to change, especially in the cowboy deal of holding people accountable for things they don't know.
Mm-hmm. Everybody started somewhere.
You read These Are the Vaqueros.
Yeah.
The young men got to ride the finished bridle horses, and somewhere that flipped.
Yeah.
And it's like you're expected to know, as somebody that doesn't know anything, how to start a colt.
Look at Cord Blunt's song, Old Man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. I freaking love Cord Blunt, by the way.
Me too.
I had a moment with him at the first time I was on that panel at the Outside Circle show.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know he was in the audience of that deal.
Oh, yeah.
And at the show that night, I was at the bar waiting to get my vase of water filled up.
Yeah.
And he came up to me and he's like, hey, I just want to thank you for what you're doing. It's very important and it matters. And I was like,
actually, I ran into Cord last week.
Cord Blunt, dude. Like, I love that dude.
Yeah. I ran into last week and we actually kind of talked about that. He brought that up. Yeah. Yeah. It's so important, especially in this culture. We're
changing the narrative, dude.
Yeah.
And it takes guys like you, and it takes guys like Dakota and Reichert, and it takes all of us using our voice to say, hey, it doesn't have to be like it's always been.
No.
My biggest pet peeve, every ranch I worked at, I would come and I'm like, why do you do it that way? Well, that's the way Grandpa always did it.
Right.
I'm like, your grandpa was an idiot.
In agriculture, yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's
like,
we've always done it. Yeah.
This like closed-mindedness thing of like, and dude, we're at the Buckaroo Traditions gathering. It's so important to keep these traditions alive.
Yeah.
But let's embrace this younger generation in a way that gets rid of these stigmas.
The biggest one that forever resonates with me that really changed my mind, especially I was a college kid, 6'5", cocky bareback rider. And I seen this picture, this poster or like a sign on the edge of this rodeo arena. And it just read, somewhere in this arena, you've probably seen it, is a kid that wants to be just like you someday. You owe it to them to be your best.
Yep. Yeah. I love it. That's a great way to bookend this. To any young man listening to this that lives in Minnesota or the Midwest, if you want to chase this dream down, chase good leadership.
Yeah.
Don't chase the money. Go find and invest yourself, because
don't just chase the ones that are cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have so many friends. I just had Justin Reichert on here. He didn't grow up in Nevada. Like, if you want it, come get it. Find someone that will mentor you.
Yeah.
Because we need you.
Yes.
We don't need kids that were raised in it and think they know everything.
Yeah.
We need people that are hungry, that want to learn and
are willing to learn.
And willing, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, dude. Look, I could talk to you all night. But
Same.
We need to go eat and go listen to some good music.
We got some dancing to go do.
I'm going to watch you dance.
I'll wear out the shoe on my other foot.
You're awesome.
Thanks, man.
Love you, brother.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you
Love
so much.
Thank you very much
You're
for
the
having me on.
best.
No, it means a lot. So happy to be here.
Thanks, guys. Adios.